two, one, two, three.
Hello and welcome to Ithaca DSA Presents.
I'm Rene Rojas, and today we'll be speaking with Alex Hastings about an exciting recent development for labor and working people in New York and across the U.S. Alex is a member of New York City DSA and is on the organizing committee of the New York City DSA Labor Branch. She is also a staff organizer with the United Auto Workers Union in the city. She played a direct role supporting Hunts Point strikers on the picket line. So Alex will be talking to us about the Hunts Point produce market workers' strike. The Hunts Point terminal in the Bronx is the largest produce market in the country, with 3,000 workers, 1,400 of whom are unionized. We will examine the significance of the strike and its victory and explore what it means for labor and popular struggles under the Biden administration. Why don't you briefly summarize who the Hunts Point workers are, the industry they work in, and the day-to-day work they do? You can also, talk to us about what pushed them to strike and what was the strike's outcome. What did these workers win and what do they still need to fight for?
The Hunts Point Produce Market is a fruit and vegetable distribution center in the Bronx here in New York City. And it actually supplies 60% of all produce in New York, processing around $2 billion in sales every year. And there's roughly 1,400 frontline workers responsible for getting that food to us and stocking produce in markets and grocery stores. And they're also essential workers who have been working throughout the pandemic. And so leading up to this 6-day strike that took place from January 17th to the 22nd, they were in the middle of renegotiating their contract with the employer, but also they'd been working all throughout this global public health crisis, saw many of their coworkers get sick, and saw at least six workers pass away from COVID-19. And so the strike really was the culmination of reaching the end of their contract renegotiations at the produce distribution center, but also just a culmination of difficulties and the strain of working as essential workers throughout COVID. And so they're members of Teamsters Local 202, and just for more context, there's about 1.4 million Teamsters members nationally, representing folks in logistics industry and shipping and trucking, and Teamsters Joint Council 16 represents about 120,000 workers in downstate New York and Puerto Rico. And so that's the local union that workers who went on strike were part of. And so I just more context about the contract renegotiations. Kind of what it came down to was the membership was asking for a $1 raise from their employer, and their employer wasn't budging and only offering a 30-cent raise, despite everyone being frontline workers, and despite the fact that their employers had received $15 million in forgivable loans during the pandemic. And overall, this industry has made millions in profit off essential workers even before COVID. And so these are Teamsters workers who feed our city and distribute goods to our grocery stores. And the average base wages has been between $18 and $21 an hour. And so this $1 raise is really what it came down to, and why people ended up walking out on strike. So after the 6-day strike, management ended up putting on the table a 70-cent hourly raise, which would increase to $1.85 over 3 years, plus additional contributions of 40 cents an hour towards employee health care, which is a really significant win. And so, they ended up actually 90% of members voted yes to ratify this new 3-year tentative agreement, which is a huge victory. Obviously, it wasn't the full $1 raise that people went out on strike for, but it's the largest raise in the local in the past 30 years, I believe, and there were no cutbacks. And so it definitely was an enormous success. And because of their successful strike, that they were able to secure these wins.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, I believe this particular local hadn't gone on strike in 35 years, or a little more over 35 years. So it's quite remarkable that under these circumstances, they were able to pull this off. But so can you talk to us about some of the key challenges the workers faced and why, in spite of these challenges, they were able to win the strike? It would also be great if you could describe the strategies they used and perhaps talk about the involvement of other actors and forces that became involved in the conflict. We know, for instance, that on the one hand, the NYPD, the police, arrived at the scene very aggressively at one point, while on the other, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, skipped Biden's administration and showed up on the picket line. And then, of course, we want to know about what your role was and other DSA members and what you guys did to support the workers' demands and their strategies.
Awesome. Yeah, I can tackle a few of those. And then if I forget anything, please remind me, because I think there was a lot of really important questions in there. And I definitely also want to speak to the community support and the kind of organizing that New York City DSA, led by our Bronx Upper Manhattan chapter and the labor branch and other geographic branches, did to help mobilize community support for the strike. But I think, to start, you asked just to talk more about the strategies and kind of the different forces involved in this strike and in the conflict. And so I think kind of the first thing that the Hunts Point strike showed is just how workers win strikes, which is through mass participation and strong leadership in their union. And so leading into this strike towards the end of their contract negotiations, they held a strike authorization vote which passed with almost 90% of the vote. So 90% of workers who voted to authorize a strike over this $1 raise as they were trying to reach a final agreement on their contract. And so what starts as one-on-one conversations with coworkers slowly builds into widespread support for actually walking out on strike. And I think especially right now with COVID, and we've seen this with other labor organizing and workplace struggles during the pandemic, there's definitely a major financial burden of going on strike always, but especially right now when so many are also out of work. When workers go out and strike together, that's just one more reason. I mean, it's with a full understanding of the material sacrifice that it entails, and workers do it anyway because we know that's how we demonstrate collective power and win material gains for ourselves and coworkers and the working class. And so I think that was, I'm sure, and just from hearing folks on the picket line, was definitely one challenge for this strike, especially with the economy during COVID. And then, what you mentioned as well, just the police showing up earlier in the week during the strike and arrested 6 of the strikers. Just this challenge of standing strong and united during a labor action, and especially a strike, which can be very tense, and just always kind of sticking together through it. And definitely in this instance, just the fact that there were strike breakers trying to come in was a huge challenge to try to stay united as a group. And it definitely, that kind of leads into our community support for this strike, which just, I can talk more a little bit about what we as DSA did in this instance and what we can do to support workers winning their strikes in the future. And also just the stuff we can do as fellow union members or fellow workers to bring our coworkers, our neighbors, and just other folks to the picket line beyond DSA, beyond fellow DSA members. And I think the Chicago DSA teachers strike support is also just like a shining example of great solidarity work they've done in the past to support teacher organizing. And we definitely kind of learned a lot from them, and they had a lot of great resources. So I wanted to shout out to that too. But Yeah, the timeline kind of for our community support, just to go day by day, if that's okay, early on. But and yeah, and as was said, I'm on the organizing committee with the labor branch, which just brings together socialists in the labor movement to organize at our workplaces, which is one place we have power to fight for a better world and build a stronger labor movement and multiracial working class struggle together, and kind of organize as DSA members in our unions. And strike solidarity is an important kind of tenet of the work that we do and that we've been doing in New York City. But so yeah, so the way it started, I think overall our chapter coordinated picket shifts. We coordinated picket shifts, available car seats for people driving over to Hunts Point. We coordinated bringing supplies to striking workers. Our chapter's Bronx and Upper Manhattan branch immediately mobilized members and raised money and brought like coffee, food, and materials to the picket line. And basically on Monday, after hearing about the strike, a few members from Bronx, Upper Manhattan, North Brooklyn, and the labor branch just drove up there and just asked kind of what was needed to help support and membership. The union Local 202 said mainly just having supporters on the picket line with them to join them in the strike would be the most important, and also meals and food, because it was a 24/7 picket. So they were there all day and all night. And so our chapter immediately got to work, and we sent a text message to thousands of New York City DSA members, just telling them to come up to Hunts Point and join the picket line. And we circulated images and texts over social media, and just generally in our networks started getting people in our chapter and beyond that to join the strike in the Bronx, especially since we weren't sure how long it was going to go on at that point, since they didn't have a deadline. It was kind of an indefinite walkout. But yeah, and the kind of other aspect of that was calling on our recently elected slate here in New York City of socialist elected officials to come down to the strike and use their networks to join and support workers. And so by day two, there was, I think throughout the whole week, there was roughly 200 to 300 people on the ground coordinating and fundraising for strike support efforts. And just generally, we ended up raising money and spending $10K on food and supplies for the strikers. And just an amazing showing from our chapter with 150 to 200 of us on the picket line over 4 days, joining workers on strike. And so,
well, that's excellent. It sounds like you guys mobilized a really, really large effort, and you guys essentially turned into and helped coordinate a broader auxiliary kind of force. And if I hear you correctly, it was just a matter of you guys already being organized as a branch and as different branches in New York City, and showing up essentially at the picket line, directly contacting them, and then coordinating both material support and then shifts on the picket line, which is really a great example of how to do strike solidarity and support work. And it says a lot about the impact that the strike and involvement in the strike surely had on you and other DSA members. But could you talk also about what the broader significance perhaps of the strike for workers beyond Hunts Point, beyond New York City, for the entire labor movement, and for community organizers more generally? I mean, what does the strike mean, perhaps, if you could say something about what it means in terms of the class power or shifting class power and fights for deeper social and democratic reforms? And what does it mean about, what does it tell us about some of the key goals and tasks for labor organizers and rank and file workers under Biden's new administration?
Another thing I would just mention too is one reason we were kind of able to hit the ground running quickly is we also have a number of New York City DSA members who work in the logistics industry and are also Teamsters in the same district council union. And so, yeah, showing up and asking what was needed to support, and then quickly bringing people to the picket line was the main kind of our main task and effort that we did. But back to your question, which I think is one that is on everyone's minds right now, just especially as we move into the Biden administration after 4 years of Trump, kind of what can our priorities be and how has the terrain changed in terms of labor organizing. I think like just thinking about this specific victory and connecting it with other struggles going on right now, just overall workers organizing and winning is a very transformative experience for people, for everyone involved, and people realize how much power they have together to challenge an employer who, when you don't have a union, has unilateral control and decision making over your working conditions and over your life. And organizing changes that power imbalance, and people really start making connections with their wider lives. And I think just one contribution we can make as DSA or as socialists is kind of helping make that connection with people with our socialist issue campaigns, whether it's defund NYPD or fighting for single payer healthcare or a Green New Deal or public utilities. These wider important struggles in our society after people go through workplace organizing or a struggle at their workplace and see how much power they have together to make things better, connecting it to all of our lives, to fight for a more just world. And so I think that's definitely one key lesson I feel like I've experienced or I've seen. And yeah, just class struggle is happening every day at our jobs. And the strike is one example of these workers kind of engaging in class struggle to have material gains and make life better at work and outside of work. And organizing mass participation strikes and winning raises class consciousness. And so I think under Biden, we can absolutely keep continuing to do that. And the terrain's actually much more favorable for organizing because there's less obstacles kind of blocking people from succeeding in that.
You mentioned that many DSA members were Teamsters. They are Teamsters or they work in logistics. I find it's interesting that the first major post-Trump strike did take place in a produce terminal that feeds New York City and much of the northeastern seaboard. Amazon workers right now are involved in an exciting organizing drive in the South and Alabama, I believe. Do you and other fellow labor activists find that the logistics and food distribution industries offer promising and strategic opportunities for organizing? And more broadly, you kind of touched on this, but perhaps you can say more. What's your read of Biden's stance on labor rights? And where do you see possibilities for campaigns and wins with a return to, neoliberal Democrats to power?
Yeah, so absolutely. I definitely think the logistics industry has promising strategic opportunities for organizing, as well as in these major economic choke points. I think I've read somewhere, I think this is correct, but every day UPS moves 3% of the global GDP and 6% of the US GDP. And so, which is incredibly massive undertaking by workers who are making our economy run and obviously don't see any of the profits of these sectors. And I think already even before Biden took office, we saw over this summer during Black Lives Matter, the International Longshore Workers Union had a 8-minute strike and shut down ports on the West Coast for Black Lives Matter, and just how powerful workers in these hubs are because they control so much of resource distribution that goes all over the country. And so, and there's definitely a reason why workers in these industry in the US and internationally are coming together to make demands. It's like a really profitable industry. The CEOs have made even more money during the pandemic, and workers see none of that wealth, even though they're the ones producing it. And so I think just since it's a growing industry, and since there's been a lot of activity, it's definitely strategic and an opportunity to keep winning there. And when workers see other workers win improvements and come together, it inspires that in other places, and just in general will build the labor movement and increase union density in this country, I think. And yeah, definitely, I think here in New York City, there's a fair number of folks who are working in some of these industries, and encourage people to join a union job and take part in that, or unionize your workplace as well. Yeah, and just what you asked about, just under Biden, kind of what other opportunities there might be. I think beating Trump changed the terrain to be much more favorable for organizing. The past 4 years, the National Labor Relations Board has been really conservative. There's been a lot of laws passed that just make it really hard for even workers who succeed in unionizing to actually go through to negotiate their first contract. And so a Biden National Labor Relations Board can only help with the organizing that's already been happening the past 4 years. And I think we have an opportunity to organize under Biden to pass some crucial pieces of legislation that would make workers' lives so much easier. For example, the PRO Act, the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, which would protect the basic right to join a union and expand collective bargaining rights, would be amazing. That would really just help workers keep joining unions and winning even stronger demands when they renegotiate contracts. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's great to hear about the organizing that's going on in New York City. It's also, great to know about how a strike in logistics unfolded, in such detail. And we can only hope that there's an escalation of labor actions, in these hubs, these what you described as choke points, where workers have an enormous amount of leverage, not only over their direct employers, but over the economy, right, and systems of distribution more generally. But let's go from these large kind of macro and promising ideas and take the discussion to a local level. As I said, although much work remains to be done to achieve robust worker rights and protections in New York City, it's still ahead of many cities and towns across the state on many measures and issues, like, just measures like union density, issues like tenants' rights, $15 minimum wage, just cause, et cetera, along with some things you mentioned. But it'd be interesting to reflect on what this means for smaller towns and cities like perhaps Ithaca here, or even Binghamton not far from here. And what can workers and labor activists around here do to ramp up labor organizing around, much needed democratization of the workplace and just growing political influence more generally? What do you think we might learn from what happened there, and how might we apply some lessons locally?
I could be mistaken, but I think New York City might be the city in the country with the highest union density overall, which is amazing. And yet there's still so much to be done for workers' rights and building working class power. And nationally, I think that in the private sector, union density is just somewhere around 6.6% or something like that. And it obviously used to be much higher. And especially in all parts of the country, there's still a lot that can be done to advance this cause. And so I think there's a lot of potential right now, luckily, just on a national scale, and even in places where maybe there haven't traditionally been unions, or the labor movement's been weakened by anti-union legislation and just the ruling class. But I think, one of the first things would definitely be that anyone can organize their workplace, and unions give workers more power together in a democratic say in their working conditions. And they're also one of the strongest ways we can fight racism and sexism and harassment and discrimination in our lives at work, and actually have an infrastructure to prevent these things or address them when they happen, and kind of change the power dynamics at our job. And so definitely organizing and winning material gains inspires more people to do that. And it's Sarah Nelson, who's the president of the Flight attendants union says power expands, it doesn't contract. And so even in a small workplace, it's a really powerful and transformative experience to pursue those types of protections and power together. And so that'd be one next step, I guess, or one thing people can do. But yeah, also overall, as a DSA member, I've been really inspired by finding ways to connect whatever kind of organizing is happening in your local DSA chapter around these pressing issues that we're trying to kind of come together around to make our lives a little better and hopefully build a better society one day. Connecting that with if there's unions in your city, or just more generally with workers and your coworkers, and kind of bringing those two things together, because in the end we're fighting for definitely the same worlds that we want to live in. And yeah, I recently read an article by Rand Wilson and Peter Olney that was saying in Jacobin that said that in 2021 there's like 450 collective bargaining agreements expiring across the country involving more than 1.5 million workers. And so it's like, I think that just in the next few years, there's real opportunities to make huge strides for building our power as workers and union members, and bringing new people into the labor movement by continuing to win demands. And yeah, the unions are the collective experience of workers in the struggle. So even if you don't yet have a union, you can come together with your coworkers and have widespread support around important demands, and try to make things better and have a more democratic workplace. So
absolutely. And of course, many of those opportunities for organizing or renegotiating contracts surely will be popping up in places like Ithaca and local towns like Binghamton. So we got to keep our eyes on those. And like you said, it's really something to see how when workers come together and fight their employees, those fights don't just remain there. They expand into the community. And now you have workers who've gone through a collective fight, who have learned how to organize, right, and coordinate these battles, right, and that they can then take into their communities to fight other injustices, other forms of oppression. And of course, being organized at the work site gives them real power over institutions, gives them leverage over the economy and over politicians. So these things obviously tie into each other. I'm
looking forward to this year to see what we can do in New York State and across the country to continue to support workers winning strikes and labor struggles.
Excellent. Well, this has been Ithaca DSA Presents. Once again, I am Rene Rojas, and we've been speaking with Alex Hastings, who's a member of New York City DSA, and she's on the organizing committee of the New York City DSA Labor Branch.